right, we're live. All right, everyone. Joseph Varghese here, rulesforsuccess.com. I'm here with my good buddy of 20 years, Mr.
That's right.
Rich Kuepper. Rich and I go back quite a bit throughout community. We have passions for personal development, leadership, and specifically the world of Tony Robbins. Actually, Rich is actually a friend of Tony Robbins. Kind of go
Yeah.
back when Tony was a bit younger, like back in the days, and he's of course still monumentally doing great things on stages around the world. 20 years our
It's
friendship
amazing.
here. Yeah, brother. How,
Yeah.
how, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Great to see you. Great to be part of the community here. I'm looking forward to sharing some thoughts and ideas and ways to get greater performance from yourself and your people around you during the conversation. So
Amazing, bro.
wonderful.
So Rich runs Lead Dash USA. He is one of the top experiential uh, leader facilitators in the whole world. And he has gone to major organizations over the years, including PayPal, Fidelity, organizations that you've heard: eBay, Yale University, Citibank, DHL, Verisign, Agile. He's done a lot of cool things in the corporate space. And more recently, he's been engaging in a partnership with leading-human.com. We're going to delve into all of that. We're going to delve into Rich's history, his journey, where he got to where he is now, and some of his rules for success, his rituals. I'm super excited for our audience out there to access this recording as well as a mind map summary. You go to rulesforsuccess.com. You can access this interview and the summary and some notes and kind of a cool mind map that we put together based on the things that Rich shares, including his contact information too as well. So rulesforsuccess.com. Good stuff, brother. So Rich, what got you this journey? Like how did you get to be this extraordinary leader, facilitator, this experiential teacher as you are? And I know some of your background, but for our audience out there, a lot of our members are entrepreneurs. They want to know, like, how did you get to where you are now, brother?
Well, I would love to be able to say I had a very clear plan and I executed daily on that. And this is what brought me here. And the reality of it, it was a lot messier and more confused and a lot of sleepless nights. But I think that's kind of the human story, right? We think early when we graduate college that we should have it all together, have a plan, know exactly what to execute. And then, life is there and there's twists and turns and you can't always see around the corner. I mean, you may have a general direction that you want to head. I wanted to have a successful career. I wanted to have a higher quality of life. That takes some resources to do that. I knew those markers in my path forward, but how exactly to get there kind of unfolded, and I just went with the flow. So the big turning point, I'd have to say for myself, is I got it from engineering into sales, and I was terrible in that transition in my career. It was incredibly painful. And saying, Joseph, right? If your difficult days are really there to serve you, right? Life is happening for you, not to you. I didn't have those sayings in my head back then, but as I reflect on it now, that was a difficult transition. I had to change kind of my personality from an engineer to a salesperson. And to do that, I got into self-development, self-help books. Back in the day, it was Zig Ziglar, like Sell Your Way to the Top. And he's still, as popular maybe now, even though he has passed, than he was back in the day. So there were other authors like that. And along the way, I came across Tony Robbins' work. I had also read Think and Grow Rich, which I'm sure the people on this channel would definitely be familiar with, right? So Think and Grow Rich. And that's when I made my first leap into being an entrepreneur. Started my own business in 89. In that struggling early business, I came across Tony Robbins' work, went to an event, thought this guy was speaking right to my heart, volunteered for an event down in Florida, 1989, I believe it was.
Wow.
And and I said, wow, are people really living? Like, I wanted to peek behind the curtain of Oz, and see, are people really living this rich, fulfilled, happy, joyful kind of life that he seems to be speaking from the stage? And I met, the team of staff that were on there. And I said, wow, this is the kind of people I want to be in. This is the kind of community I want to be around. So I got involved in staff, and one of the things led.
Meanwhile, you were like 11 years old, right? 1989, right? So, right. Fast forward.
High quality vitamins, my friend.
Actually, yes.
Very blessed with DNA. But yeah, so this is a ways back. Where was I? I was at the end of my 20s, actually, right in the beginning of my 30s. And so, as you know, and I got involved deeply. It was in the kind of the inner circle of the Robbins organization, was part of the first introductions into, outside the United States. Tony had only been presenting in the United States. I was on the first tour to England, first tour to Australia, and breaking open kind of the globe with him back in those days. So it was heady, exciting. I couldn't believe, I'm sitting on private jets with that elite team that kind of circled Tony. So how did I wind up in this peer group? I mean, it was amazing, And then I talked to somebody about it. I go, I don't know how a kid from Stratford, Connecticut winds up in this situation. And somebody else was saying the same thing to me. And I realized, it doesn't matter where you're from, right? It matters where you wind up, right?
Yes.
It's what do you put into your life that takes you onto these journeys. And I have to say, one of the things that helped me to get to where I am, I said yes to a lot of things in life. I do believe that yes is the answer to most things. Now, maybe not dropping heroin or jumping off a bridge, but most opportunities, the more you say yes, the more you get exposed to things, the deeper and richer, the more capacity you build as a human being, because you've had more and more exposure to things.
You got me saying yes already, right? Yes.
It's contagious.
And proximity is power. So you got in your 20s, you got to be on private jets with inner circle,
and all of that, and all the people that to be able to learn leadership development from General Schwarzkopf or Colin Powell. I mean, that's a pretty rare opportunity. So I got to meet just an enormous amount of incredibly successful people in that environment. And one day I was at an event and realized, the people that are on Tony's infomercials, back when he had infomercials, they're out living the work, right? They're not necessarily on staff, right? They're out. Some of them do both, right?
Yes.
But most of them are out there building their dream. And I said, well, what's my dream? And that's when I made the switch to taking the power of an experience, as you know, Tony's firewalk experience, right? To take the power of an experience to get people engaged physically, mentally, emotionally in their learning, so that it sticks, so that it's powerful, so it shapes your identity into something different, right? And we all live true to our identity. So I decided to take a physical metaphor into corporate America and teach leadership development through a variety of different physical acts, breaking a board, for example, and because I didn't want the liability of having people walk on fire.
Right. Yes.
So I've created a whole bunch of things, building bikes, building race cars, all different kinds of activities.
I've seen the PVC tubing to building things together, like a whole I've seen that video of it recently on your website, actually. And so I'm an engineer. That's where I used to be. Kind of similar journey, got the sales and all of that over the years. And of course, development was a big factor of that. What type of engineer were you? Curious to, but my mind's still stuck there as well. Also.
Electrical engineer.
Amazing. Got it.
Yeah. And I didn't necessarily have a big passion for that. At the time, the integrated chip, the IC, right, had just been created. So I am dating myself, right? So the first chips were being created, and it seemed like computers are going to be the next biggest thing. So I went to school for hardware and kind of scoffed at the software guys because, hey, if you don't have the box, then what good is the software? And that was my first big mistake choice in life. I should have gone software back in those days. It would have been a different story. Who knows where my life would have been. Not that I have any regrets, but really it was a funny thing. Hardware is disposable now, right?
I think life creating impact and being able to see impact is very valuable. Like I had that journey. I was a computer engineer years ago and left that world. There's a lot of money there, but being able to see impact. And you've been a huge inspiration to me because 20 years ago when I got involved with the community called New York Power Team, I attended a meeting. I think the first meeting I attended, they played a video of something that just happened, an event called Bass Brigade, and you and Ross Lagamina made a delivery to a family that where something catastrophic happened, where there were just
Yeah.
things that we don't want to think about that happened to his family, and then going back to this family where this event happened, and doing a home makeover and giving the children who just lost their mom an opportunity to experience New York fully Radio City Music Hall while their home was being made over by you and several other people. That is truly experiential. Being able to put that together, and for me, like that corporate world of where I was before as a engineer was fun in some ways because it was financially rewarding. Yet being able to actively do things this day, and I lead that community in New York Power Team, also one of the leaders of the Bass Brigade. Seeing you 20 years ago in that video caused me, inspired me to step up as a leader. And I believe leaders cause leaders, leaders inspire leaders. And there's something about visually, experientially having the impact. That's why so many of us volunteer for nonprofits and volunteer for other organizations, because you want to feel the experience of service. And that's just one thing that stands out. And my experience of you also, Rich, is that it's less about significance. It's about servant leadership. There's a lot. I find a lot of people, specifically in this space, and I want the audience to know this too, who's watching this, in this space of being an influencer. A lot of influencers, they're on video, creating content and getting out there and doing all those things, which is good. And I embrace the marketing hat too as well. You're actively spend most of your time, as I see you in all the years, 20 years knowing you, in that space of less significance and more servant leadership, which is really key for organizations, because when you're out to serve, the moment we start thinking about ourselves, capturing ourselves on video and all of that, one thing useful for marketing, it really takes us away from really fully serving our audience. So I just want to acknowledge you, because my experience of you 20 years now, like, I see you a couple times a year, sometimes more in certain situations, it has been just that. And yeah, so for audience out there, this man here is the true servant leader in my experience, and it's been fun seeing her this journey. Build Lead USA, and now also Leading Human, to talk about this. So Lead USA was about experiential events, traveling the world, the country, Canada, PayPal, all of that. What is Leading Human? I know there's a partnership you have with someone else, and I believe, as I understand it, because of this new unique world we live in, where being virtually connected the way we are here is a way of life. As I understand it, this kind of came in to support organizations and people and entrepreneurs in this new world we're in. Is that accurate?
Right. That is. And before I jump into that, hey, thank you, Joseph, for acknowledging that my path maybe, and for reminding me of that experience and helping that family in the Bronx. That was a life-changing experience for me as well. Even though I was kind of spearheading part of that, I was part of a team, but that changed my life as well in a profound way, to realize there is so much need in the communities all around us, and some of the stories are horrific compared to the life that I've been blessed with.
Yes.
And so it really brought a tremendous amount of gratitude for the life. Now, we can all have our pity parties, right, about how difficult things were, but compared to some other human beings and what they have to deal with, it's nothing. We've already hit the Powerball, right?
Yes.
And being born into the families that we live in and the communities that we are brought up in. And so thank you for bringing up that memory. And that was transformative. And it's the best day of the year for me is when we do that Bass Brigade together, and we're able to help other families and to share our good fortune with others less fortunate, and in the hopes that they will pay that forward, get themselves into a better place, and pay it forward in the future. So thanks for that memory. So yes, I spent 25 years building Lead USA, creating these really cool experiences for human beings. And then COVID came, and nobody was leaving the house. No one was getting on a plane. No organization was bringing groups together. And I had, again, I feel like grace has just traveled with me in my life. I was connected through a CEO of a tech company based in India, female leader, had an executive coach. And working with that executive coach and knowing me as not only a vendor to her company, but we became friends. She said, "You two ought to get together because there's a lot of
Synergy, right?
similarities." Yeah, just a really good, a lot of rapport already she could see. And so I connected with this executive coach, Sarah Harper, based out of New Jersey. Had an amazing career in marketing in Manhattan and helped, companies grow and scale and IPO, and then decided to become an executive coach herself right around just before COVID. And so during COVID, we connected and created a company called Leading Human, because what we realized, and this is where like our circles have kind of come back together, connect again, and you have your momentum circles and connecting people. And that, as we were sitting down, okay, we have this company, we want to help people have greater success with less stress and effort. How do we, what are some of the core issues? Companies have been dealing with engagement and high turnover and high levels of stress, and as we were trying to break it down and figure out what our message is, we realized that a lot of the ills of an organization, a lot of the toxicity of an organization, a lot of the challenges that leaders face is because of lack of connectedness between people. So for example, if as a leader you can't connect with your team, what's the number one reason why people leave an organization is they don't feel a connection with their leader, right?
They're not engaged with the people around them, their staff, and also the leader and management. Yes,
right.
Yes.
Right. So either I leave, which creates turnover, or I stay and I'm disengaged, right? That quiet quitting thing that everyone's faced, right? So a leader needs to be able to connect with the team, but also as being a part of a team is the environment, is the culture one in which I feel part of that team. And or maybe I feel part of this team, but is that team connected to the other teams there, right? Is QA connected to development or marketing connected to the different parts of the organization, right? A lot of times there's friction in there.
Yes.
And so just more stress, lower productivity because of lack of connectedness. But what about, am I connected to the mission of my group? What are we working towards? You worked in corporate America. Did you feel like you had a stake in the mission of the group and or the company?
Yeah.
And are they connected to me in my growth and development? So really kind of this idea of connection, if it's not there, low productivity, high turnover, lots of stress, lack of engagement, and unwellness, right?
Yes.
Mental health and the stress of having to show up, having to make the mortgage payments, having to do that in an environment that is not supportive and healthy for you it's an unhealthy thing for a human being.
Exactly.
So if you could begin to transform that, right? Allow a leader to get the skill sets, right? To be able to actually be a little bit more authentic in their communication, to be able to create the foundations of trust between them and their direct reports, and trust between the organization, create a safe, we call psychologically safe environment where people can share ideas. Now you're generating creativity. Now you're being more productive. Now you're feeling part of a winning team. That increases engagement, right? That reduces turnover, and all of a sudden the company begins to transform. And how we do that, right? We call ourselves human-led, tech-enabled.
Love that.
And just results obsessed. Right?
I love that.
Yes. I don't know how many hours, how much sand is left in our hourglass. None of us do, actually, right? And so in the time that we have, I want to have as much impact as possible. And so the beautiful thing at Sarah, one of her skill sets that she brings to our partnership is she is really great with data, right? So she's able to create the metrics, and we can measure that impact in a way that I could never do when I was independent on my own. And so now we can have a before and an after. We could measure the impact of these programs. And how we do it is, it's not an e-learning module. We have a facilitator, myself. We have a whole team of coaches now that we're working with that facilitate the 45-minute conversation once a week for anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks, 4 and 8 weeks, depending upon the modules that the client selects. And we give them the learning. here's a YouTube video, here's a HBR article to read. Maybe it'll take 15 to 18 minutes for you to digest that information before the session. You come to it. So it's not death by PowerPoint during the learning session. You've done the learning. What we want to create is the gym, right? Is
Amazing.
to be able to flex the muscle of
Yes.
that skill.
Yes.
We teach a model in those the materials that we send, and now we get to flex that model. We get to stand in it and feel what it's like as a learner or as a leader and a learner. How does it work? And then we dialogue around it afterwards. And people just love that level of engagement because it's not.
So how do you do the experiential now? So it's a virtual event now. They've watched some of these trainings, things you've sent them, right, around leadership and communication and team building of sorts. And how do you now translate that into a virtual event? Because you're a master of like, where you've been before, robust courses and having these metaphors where people are breaking boards or building PVC piping, like all these things built on metaphors, but there's a physicality around that. And oftentimes it's outdoors or an indoor space.
Sure.
How are you now translating that to a team, like on a virtual screen where you have like 8 or 9 executives and leaders or managers of team on board together?
Right. So great question. It's a different model of learning. There's 2 ways to really integrate learning. You can, be engaged physically, mentally, emotionally, deeply immersed in that, right? If you add uniqueness to it, it actually gets the mind to sharpen its focus in a new way, and heighten awareness to the new data that's coming towards you, right?
Yes.
So that's one way to metabolize that learning, and the other way is that repeated immersion. Right?
Yes.
And that's what this model is the repeated immersion. And there are times clients request a kickoff in the beginning, so we have that physical immersion, mentally and emotionally, right? We do that experience up front, and then we follow that now in a way that I could never do it in the last 26 years with now the learning has longevity, right? Now we can deeply integrate that learning in spaced repetition over time.
Amazing.
So, and the key piece to that is you're not being passive in the learning in these sessions, right? Being, like I said, we don't use PowerPoint to teach. They've done the learning. We have people immersed in dialogue. We put them into Zoom rooms in dyads or triads. And they are now human dialoguing leader to leader. These are all peers, right? Learning these leadership models. Now they're in dialogue with each other. And then after they come back from the Zoom rooms, now we debrief. We always build in after action review, right?
Yes.
Every high performing team, every special ops group, the Navy SEALs, etc., they always do after action because things never work out the way you planned. There are always the unanticipated events. But if you do an after action review, you become a learning organization, right? You're getting better with each rep, with each iteration. And so we want to build that discipline into the leaders to have that after action. So after they go out to the Zoom rooms, they come back and we do this. What worked, what didn't work? How can you apply this in more detail? When will you apply it? So that knowledge for knowledge's sake doesn't change anything. It's the application of knowledge that can revolutionize your career, can revolutionize your life. And so we want to build that habit of after action review, and then how are you going to apply it? So we do the application right in the middle of the session, right through these Zoom rooms, and that's where the potency is.
So you encourage candor, like the highs, lows, lessons, how you can implement this. You encourage candor, and I love it. And you by who you're being as a leader, you create that in most every space I've seen you in, as far as encouraging people to be authentic, real, and direct about how they can apply that in their lives. And how do your partner with this? Like, how does she measure the data? Like, I'm curious because it's a Zoom session. Are you surveying people afterward? I'm curious.
So there's a variety of different ways to get the qual and the quant, right? And we want to make sure we understand the measures up front with our client, because you can always make data look good after the fact.
Yes.
But we want to make sure, we're authentic and representing what's actually happening there. So we determine those factors up front, and then we measure them. We do a pre-event, pre-session survey, a post-session survey. We also use an AI tool during the sessions. Now, that's not available when people go out into breakout rooms, but the AI will give you sentiment, level of engagement, things like that during the sessions.
Hmm.
And so what we found is over the 8 weeks, you know, the engagement day session one, a little low. People are trying to understand the format and getting to understand what the process is, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
that first, but then as the sessions go on, engagement is increased because people get more comfortable with the format. They love the dialogue that they have, because it's rare in an organization that a
Yes.
group of leaders, and we keep the cohorts 25 people or less.
Yes.
It's rare in an organization for leaders to get together to talk about leadership
Right.
amongst themselves, amongst
Right.
each other, right? You know, I have an employee who keeps slipping the schedule, right? We have deadlines we got to make. I'm frustrated in how to deal with that, how to have that conversation. Well, now
Yes.
they can dialogue. I had the same issue. This is how I resolved it. Now they can, because otherwise they're on a Zoom talking about a specific task that they need to accomplish to move that project forward, and they never get the chance to talk about leadership.
Yes.
So we didn't anticipate this going into developing these programs, but now companies are asking us to continue that cohort dialogue once a month, not once a week, once a month. They get together, we facilitate, they choose the topic, and then they rotate who the leader is that's going to speak on a particular topic, and we just manage that dialogue, just because they're hungry to connect and talk about these challenges as a leader, because leading other human beings is the most challenging thing you're going to do as a person, right?
Yes. Yes.
But it is also the most absolutely rewarding thing
Yes.
if you do it right and you help people flourish and grow and tap into aspects of their being, of their talents, of their resources that they bring that they're not even aware of, yet you help them discover that from within themselves. Dude, man,
It's amazing. Yes.
For me, that's what makes life worth living, right? That's when the light bulbs go off and people see, and you can see them shift their identity in the moment. It's beautiful, right?
I could see you're fueled, you're passionate about this, and I'm sure also when they go back to their workspace. So I'm sure a lot of these people, they may not actually interact. Like back when I used to work in the corporate world, we used to see people in the hallway and in buildings in New York City corporations. But now in this virtual world, people come anywhere. So teams are anywhere, and also around this world. There could be offices in Asia and Europe and so forth. And the tech is there now. So we have the ability, like, I use Slack with my team, and we have huddles and things of that sort. We can communicate there. But yet something's lost at times, specifically that human-to-human connection, the rawness that's there that builds trust. And a lot of us feel isolated. Isolation is a dream destroyer. At least at my experience with regard to success circles and how we engage entrepreneurs. And it's getting people present to their why, their purpose, that the overall purpose of what they're doing. And oftentimes that's a matter of creating some sort of impact in the organization or with people who they're serving, their families too. So I love it. I love the human connection to it. And it's so brilliant. The brand leading human. It's brilliant because it's that now I understand it's that human to human connection. And that often can get lost in this world of noise where there's just so much technology and so many distractions and notifications and then social media. And then also when you're working on a task, sometimes concentration is lost because you're focusing on one thing and then there's a request, and not understanding the request and who's coming from, or the human who's making that request.
Right.
Things can get lost, especially if they're not understanding what we're focusing on, what the game is we're focusing on at the time. They might have other expectations. And I think it's so great when you're able to bring people together where they're able to understand each other in this unique way and adjust the expectations accordingly based on the complexity of each of our lives and the things we're up to. As humans, right? As leaders, as managers, all of that. That's awesome, man.
Right. And I really do, so as it's pretty evident here, right? I've had a long career.
Yes.
Right. But I really feel for the young people who've entered the workforce, maybe during COVID, maybe they were in high school during COVID. Man, it really struck me when you said isolation is a dream killer, right? Because we are, for 100,000 years, we're tribal people, right? We counted on each other. We trusted each other with our lives to get to the next day, right? And now, because of the devices and technology, which has tremendous benefit, also has us more isolated than ever. And particularly for the young, like I still have friends in my life from my very first job, right?
Yes.
As an engineer, because we were all young, excited about,
Yes, yeah,
getting out
yeah.
into the workforce. We'd go and have a beer and a snack after work, happy hour. And
Yes.
those relationships are still in my life today.
Yes.
And if you're working virtually and you're isolated, you don't necessarily have those
Exactly.
opportunities.
Yeah.
And people, they say, well, I don't have to commute. Well, it's so much easier. But they have no
They have
idea
no idea.
what they're losing for
Yes.
the convenience of being home and working in,
Yes.
pajama bottoms.
Exactly. Those shared experiences do pay dividends. They really do.
Right. Right. And that's why I respect so much of what you're doing. Maybe your audience is more entrepreneurs than large corporations, but as an entrepreneur, you need friends, man, because
Yes.
everything's as an entrepreneur, it's such a you get to do and choose what you want to. Man, it is the hardest road forward, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Obviously, hard roads can lead to huge
Yes.
rewards, but that's why
Yes.
we need each other. So I'm
Exactly.
happy to be share
Well,
whatever I can with the community because I'm one myself, and
yes.
I'm in my basement office and have been for 20 plus years, and without other human beings to connect with, that's
Yes.
why I'm plugged into the graduate program from Tony Robbins, and people
Yes.
like yourself that keep me on point. Those relationships that I formed in those days, man, some of the best people in my life
Absolutely. Yes.
because they're engaged. They want more out of life. They're willing to be self reflective, own their stuff, and then work to improve upon it. And so
Yes.
we all need each other to do that.
Wait.
And,
Yes.
and let's enjoy the journey along the way. We can have some laughs along the way, right? Let's
Absolutely.
happily achieve instead of the myth of achieving, then be happy.
Absolutely, brother. But my partner with the power team, we go hiking like every couple of weeks. We just have those experiences. We talk things out too. It's critical thinking, asking questions, being in nature. There's something about having those experiences person to person. And with my business, Success Circles, it's all virtually based.
Right.
And we have a cycle, momentum.buzz. People share their wins each week and we kind of post them up there. The ones that move me the most are when people meet in person. They go to Portugal, they meet their buddy they partnered up with, or they go to South America and they connect with that person.
Wow. That's cool.
It's when people get together and they translate that virtual experience into something in person that they can even go deeper. That moves me. That excites me more than anything else. It happens when people meet in person based on the depth of what they created virtually. And that gets lost.
Yeah.
And I think it's so great when what you're doing is you're bringing these virtual connections, managers, teams together in a way where there's appreciation, there's depth, and maybe when they have a company meeting once a year that they get invited to, maybe if they're fortunate, they might even be able to go somewhere palm trees together with their company, like Miami or Hawaii or something like
Right.
that. But it takes it actually deepens that drive to the mission, the culture, because they were able to appreciate each other virtually first, perhaps, and let go of any resentments and noise, things of that sort, that ill will that they may have held simply from being in a breakout room together, where they're able to build trust and appreciate each other based on the challenges things are dealing with individually as humans. And it really, as I mentioned, I love the brand Leading Human. For our audience out there, leading-human.com is what Rich and his partner have put together. And I think the combination of what you're doing is great too, because you come from that high level experiential background. She has a data driven background and her background in marketing and so forth. It's vital to basically connect heart and math together.
Right.
And,
Exactly.
and a lot of organizations, specifically leadership organizations, they neglect that. They might have too much of one side without the measurement, the data, and it doesn't really go anywhere. It just makes people feel good. Versus when you combine both together with the data, you're not just feeling good. It's also about measuring progress and bringing this back into our activities and the things that are important to us. Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Yeah. So I just want when you got to deliver results at the end, right? Connecting human beings and increasing level of engagement and obviously increasing productivity. It all has to lead towards greater profitability, right?
Yes.
That's what the C-suite needs, wants, and is measured on. And so we have to all of this connection and makes it a healthier environment. all that will lead to greater profitability. And unless you're delivering that for your client, you're not going to be invited back. Right. So
Exactly. Yeah.
we have the good fortune to be cohort after cohort. Once we get into an organization, a buzz gets created, and it's also select, right? Managers are selecting, higher level leaders are selecting their leaders to go into this program. So it's a bit of a little cachet to being selected to go through our what we call our LEAP program, and then it creates a buzz as people learn and grow, and then their teams are happier, more productive. People, hey, how do I get in? So that's been a good thing. And my partner and I, we have no ego around this, right?
Yeah.
We want to just connect people. So we are now offering a licensing agreement where organizations can get our materials, licensing material, and they can have their own
Incredible.
facilitators run with it, right? We just want to have an impact, make a positive difference, and if we do it, great. If you want us to just build modules for you and you handle it, the facilitation piece is not as challenging in this model as it was, kind of, let's say, in the old days. It's just about being able to facilitate the conversation around that learning piece, and we can train up people pretty quick on that. So that's the other option we have. But I want to go back one step, my friend.
Please, bring it on.
Because you said you had people in your learning circles and that will meet somewhere on the planet and connect, right?
Yes.
I instantly had a collage of two people with a selfie, right? Brazil, January 2024 or something, and I see a collage building of all of your people connecting in different places on the planet, and you just building out this collage on your website or on the wall behind you of the human connections that you are helping facilitate.
Yes.
Just gave me a visual for that. So just an idea, I'm planting a seed.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I love when people connect in person. They become good friends virtually, then you're able to bring it up in person, and it just deepens that. It's like it's like going. I mean, the metaphor I think about is like you. I met my wife before we got into these swipe left, swipe right apps came, right? And like and
you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly, right. Tinder and all that stuff, and I'm happy. 11 years now. We're 11-year wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Next week, and it just taking that virtual like swipe left, swipe. There's often judgment with that. This person looks this way and whatnot, and people have thoughts based on that instant, like the first moment of seeing what that person is, but then actually getting on a conversation, being in a breakout room, having the depth of how human and how vital this person is and their passions, their why, and then meeting them in person and having that be deeper. And I just think that's so vital. Like, I don't just mean like the work I do is accountability. And I just relate it that way too, because sometimes people often think about those matching protocols, things of that sort. But it's really like recognizing that we're all fundamentally, we are all imperfect. We're all actively learning to be better. Some of us are lonely. Some of us have challenges, and especially living in certain countries where, as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, like we won the lottery here. Like I believe, in terms of where you Powerball lottery you mentioned before, and other people, other places may not have these experiences that we have here, and realizing that by having these conversations this way, like the way you're leading it, it's like building the bridge, right? And building that bridge, and then bringing that forward into what we're doing. My sister and her kids last week, they spent 10 days in Honduras doing missionary work.
Wow.
And it's something that she's been doing with my niece for some time, and my nephew, who's 14, hasn't had that experience. And I know my sister, when she went to med school in India 30 years ago, when she came back, she was a completely different person. And she grew up like me, like having access to so much and like the abundance of things, and basically, and now people can order things and have things delivered to them very quickly. However, when she went, her level of humility, servant leadership shifted. And it took me a while to accept that. And then as life progressed and I started experiencing the Bass Brigade and other nonprofit endeavors here in New York City, I started to understand the value of that. the value of that humility, that value of that servant, that just the value of just being able to connect with people one-on-one, because we are so blessed. And I just think it's so important that in a company, we lose sight of that level of humanity with one another. And that just, whether it's doing things experiential to serve, like, as an organization, like you and I with the Bass Brigade come together to do that thing once a year, or do things in some sort of like other experiential settings, like you do with Lead Dash USA, your other brand, 25 years, where you do things in person. It's important to give people that highly experiential opportunity of relating to one another and connect with that bigger mission. Because the why is what fuels all of us. So it's like the bigger the why, the easier the how, as Jim Rohn says, Tony Robbins' mentor, and being able to connect that why into everything we do, where that fuels everything else, because results often are a matter of being fueled by a greater purpose beyond ourselves, beyond the organization. And you do that so brilliantly, brother. You really do.
Well, that's when you talk about connection, that's the key connection, is to what's the why that's driving you forward, right? Anything that you want to accomplish is going to have to happen through other people, with other people. So you need the connections there, but that the connection to your why is the driving force in your life, right? And so we share that in common. I wanted to I don't know how we're doing on time, but I have a personal Tony Robbins story about that I'll share with you, because it's kind of a nice capstone. The thing that we have as human beings that is not being able to be replicated through AI is empathy. And that's what separates us from all others, right? Is that empathy. And so we need to be able to, and it seems like there's a lack of that right now, if we look at the divisiveness and the tribalism that's happening in globally, actually, right?
Yes.
But what we need to do is reconnect with empathy. It's what can't be replicated by computers and AI, right? The decision making, the data collection, and the big learning modules that they can do, but they can't replicate the human aspect of that, is the empathy. And we need it more today than ever.
Absolutely.
And so I will share this story with you because I learned such a profound lesson. I am so blessed that I learned this. I can tell you, I get emotional, right? Because it was that profound, that life-changing, because I consider myself a pretty accepting human being until I realized this moment. So I was, as you know, head of security for Tony Robbins, right? Wherever he went, I went. My job was more of a crowd control, getting him to his next meeting than any, let's say, threat that was offered towards him, right? It was just pretty much getting him to where he needed to go.
Yes.
So, and I had a pretty good understanding and sense of Tony when he wanted to engage or when he was ready to disengage. But also, what the beautiful aspect of Tony is, when you had the good fortune to be in dialogue with him, he is absolutely, like, bombs could be going off around him, and he's absolutely zoned in on you. It's unbelievable, his level of presence with every individual he interacts with. And so my job is to kind of, at that time, manage that and get him to where he needs to go. So normally we would take him off the back of the stage and get him to the next meeting, undisturbed by all the thousands of people that are in the audience. But this time he wanted to walk out through the back of the auditorium and around the corner, and of course mobbed by people, just shedding love on him. It was really nice to be in that exchange as well. So we finally get him around the corner. Now I'm with one other individual in the group that knows Tony really well, and is also urgently wanting to get him to the next meeting. And we come around the corner, everybody's gone. There's just one guy there, right? Come around the corner, he goes, Tony Robbins, mother has a message for you. This is what this guy's saying. Mother has a message for you. And then the other individual looks at me like, oh, let's shake this creep.
Yes,
right?
this guy's crazy.
I'm just going to talk to you real world, right?
Yes.
I see the eyes, right? But Tony, boom, engages with this person, right? Yeah. And this gentleman's going, Tony, mother says you have a pain here, and he's kind of doing like chiropractic manipulation on Tony's back, pushing it here, and he goes, mother says there's a tension here. Mother says this, mother says that, and he's manipulating Tony, asking Tony to do this and pushing here and pushing there. And Tony's doing all of this stuff with him. And this person is like elbowing me. Come on, Rich, you're security. Let's get this guy. Let's get going. But I'm sensing from Tony that he's deeply engaged with this guy. Right. So I'm torn between the two, my inner sense that I need to move along, or that Tony wants to stay with this guy, and the urgency of getting him to the next meeting, right? Because like his agenda is packed. He gets off the stage and we're right into meetings for the next 3 hours, and he's back on stage for another 5 hours.
Right.
So I'm in this torn thing, and then finally I could see a break in the energy, and I go, okay, here we go. Thank you so much. Let's move along. And the other person, luckily not me, because I had the thought shameful of me, right? Like, Tony, why did you spend so much time with that kook? Right. And Tony whipped around and got right in their face and said, that wasn't a kook. They have a different map of the world than you do. What he was saying, that mother was what he was pushing on me, it helped me. I was in pain and I feel so much better now.
Wow.
I'm glad I didn't say anything. But in that moment, I learned a life lesson. It broke my mind open to how easily we have judgments of other human beings.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we have a different map of the terrain.
Right.
NLP terminology, right?
Yes.
This individual had a completely different map that seemed cuckoo to us, yet had relevance in helping and healing another human being.
Incredible. Love that story.
And so we need to be able to have that humility that this big, rich, powerful guy has, right? And this lack of judgment between each other, right? Because that's how we make this world a better place.
Incredible, brother. Love that story. I so awesome that you had those early experiences with Tony back in 30 years ago and beyond, and you got to relate that to what you're doing, which with the work you're doing, leading experiential workshops, and now leading Dash Human. I really relate. One question we often ask our guests, and is this: if you were to give advice to someone who's 18, kind of exploring the world, right, brand new out of high school, going to college, or just on that precipice of making a decision now that she is an adult, what's that thing you would tell that person? Or maybe even a younger version of yourself, if you go back in time. I think you made some really great decisions over the years personally, because you're out there actively creating impact, and you're being an inspiration to so many, including myself. What's that bit of information you might tell an 18-year-old version of yourself?
That's a great question. That's a meaningful question. So thank you, right, man? Like, questions have such power, right? We need to ask better quality questions. That's a great quality question. Man, I had a lot of angst. I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like I ever had the cool clothes or the right haircut, or I didn't know what I was going to do going forward. I had all this angst. And really, if I could tell myself, relax, dude, relax. It will work out. Life unfolds, right? So my catchphrase on my old business was, make your life a magical adventure. I'm sure you got emails from me with that, right? Make your life a magical adventure. And when I started my business in corporate America, people said, make your life a magical adventure is your business catchphrase? I mean, give me a break. And being an entrepreneur, which I know a lot of the audience is, right? It is an adventure. So why not make it magical, right? I just had a flight cancel. I was in Buffalo. I had to fly back to JFK. My flight got canceled. So it was Tuesday night. So I had to hop in a car and drive 7.5 hours home in the rain, right? But sometimes it's extra magical. So just make it magical. That line, I did not have it when I was 19. The belief that life is happening for you, right? Not to you, that you can relax, because as long as you learn from your experiences and you take a step forward, and I think the piece I said earlier, say yes to a lot of things in life. Say yes, even if it's uncomfortable. You don't know how it's going to be. Get outside your comfort zone. Say yes to it. Go to that Mozart concert. Go to things that are different outside of your normal pattern of things, and you'll build capacity as a human being. And then you learn. You make the next step. Sometimes you step in a hole. You get yourself out of the hole, and you take the next step forward. So relax. Life is
awesome. Relax, and life is happening for you. You're going to say something.
It's in a nursery rhyme. row, row, row your boat gently down the stream.
Mm,
Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
I love it. It's funny you mentioned it because my kids and I were talking about Dr. Seuss versus Mother Goose yesterday. We had to kind of decipher what Mother Goose is all about, and that was one of the nursery rhymes that got pulled out just yesterday in the car. So there are
See,
lessons
see,
from all these things out there, and it's
simpatico, brother.
I love it, my friend. This is absolutely amazing. I love what you're doing. I love the vision of what you're doing with leading-human.com. How do people connect with you, engage? Of course, they can go to this podcast, rulesforsuccess.com. We'll have the mind map. We'll have a summary of all the notes. They can kind of read through it or watch the video, which is fantastic. And maybe
Sure.
even put it at double the speed, perhaps, if you want to capture more if you're that kind of thinker. How do people engage with you personally to follow up with you in case they're interested in leading dash human or your other endeavors?
So email is simply rich at leading-human.com. You can go to the website, send me an email, or probably LinkedIn is where I'm most active. So Rich, and you throw my last name into the
Kuepper, right? That's right.
Kuepper. Yeah, because throw in the show notes because it's the hardest thing to spell. The first day of school was always the most painful for me, because no one could pronounce my name.
Yes.
But it's simply Cooper, but it's spelled with Kuepper. So Rich Kuepper on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way. Please, if you have any questions, you want to engage, join, let's connect on LinkedIn. Let's continue to build a network. If I can make any introductions for you, I'm happy to do that. We can make the world a better place through connections, and let's all work together to facilitate that for each other.
Amazing, brother.
Thank you.
We often end every conversation with you win, I win, we all win together, like, in everything we do in my business. And so it's one, and with that, also let our audience know once again, rules for success that come to access all of this. It's always a pleasure connecting with Rich. He and I, like, we see each other once a year, sometimes twice a year, sometimes it's more. And every experience I have with him just reminds me we rise to the quality expectations of our peer group. And he and I, every time I see him, we rise together because we always expect each other to be better and to show up more authentically and real. And that's one of the greatest gifts that I can receive. I just surround myself with people who just have high expectations of me. And he's a person who, as a leader, continues to see the best in every organization, every individual he engages with. And that truly is what defines a leader. So I appreciate your brother, and to be continued.
Well, thank you, Joseph. The feeling is quite mutual. And let's get a hiking together soon.
Absolutely.
Take care. All right.